Welcome to the 15th explainer in the series on communication, titled Effective Writing Skills. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Let's be honest for a second. So often, we treat writing like it's some sort of mystical, inborn talent. We think, well, you either have the gift of gab on the page or you just don't. But today, we're going to completely deconstruct that myth. Writing isn't magic. Actually, scratch that. It isn't just that it's not magic, it is a highly learnable, highly purposeful process of thinking, organizing, and communicating. And whether you're drafting a quick 5-line email to a colleague, writing a massive 80-page research paper, or putting together a really complex business proposal for a new client, the principles we're going to unpack today will absolutely transform how your words are received. So get comfortable, get ready to take some notes, because we are breaking this entire thing down. We're going to start from the massive big-picture concepts and work our way all the way down to the essential micro-level building blocks.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're taking a super systematic approach. We'll start with the conceptual purpose of writing, move into macro-level structure, zoom in on grammar and clarity, map out the actual writing process, adapt it for different contexts, and then wrap up with common mistakes and strategies to fix them.
All right, Section 1, the purpose of writing. Before we can really talk about how to write well, we have to deeply understand what writing actually is. And trust me, it is way more than just putting ink onto a page.
Now, I want you to consider this definition from scholar Charles Bazerman. He defines writing as a form of social action. Really think about that for a second. A form of social action. When you write, you are actively participating in the world around you. Your writing performs a real, tangible function. When a doctor writes a prescription, that little piece of paper literally guides a patient's physical treatment. When a citizen writes an application requesting official action, they are physically moving the gears of their local government. When you write your weekly report at work, you are driving corporate decision-making. Writing is a purposeful process of meaning-making. And if your writing skills are weak, well, you might seriously struggle to participate effectively in your community or your institution. And that's true no matter how brilliant your underlying ideas are.
But of course, here is the catch. Scholars Shannon and Weaver created this really famous model of communication that involves a source, a message, a channel, and a receiver. In the context of writing, you are the source. The text itself is the message, the written medium is the channel, and your reader is the receiver. Simple enough, right? But Shannon and Weaver identified something incredibly dangerous to this entire process. They called it noise. In writing, noise isn't literal static on a radio dial. It's poor grammar, it's unclear structure, it's vague vocabulary. When you write a confusing, tangled sentence, you are introducing literal noise into your communication channel. And that noise disrupts the signal, entirely preventing your reader from understanding your brilliant idea.
So let's move right along to Section 2, building the structure. Because without a solid macro-level architecture, even your grammatically perfect sentences just become confusing noise.
Structure is essentially the map that guides your reader logically through your argument. Scholars Swales and Feek make a brilliant point here. They note that readers actually expect information to be arranged in recognizable patterns. Your readers are constantly, subconsciously looking for familiar landmarks. In an academic paper, the reader is actively scanning for the introduction, then the literature review, the methodology, and finally the findings. In a business context, they are hunting for an executive summary or a problem statement right at the top, long before they ever dive into your recommendations. If you hide your main point, or if you jumble the order of these elements, your reader has to work twice as hard just to discover your basic purpose. Good structure does all that heavy cognitive lifting for them.
So, the crucial question is how we actually build that solid structure paragraph by paragraph. To achieve what we call coherence and cohesion, we need to remember that a good paragraph is a building block containing exactly one main idea. Linguists Halliday and Hassan argue that cohesion is created through specific devices, things like the repetition of key terms, clear pronoun references, and transitional expressions like therefore, however, or as a result. But, and this is absolutely vital to remember, coherence is way more than just randomly throwing transition words into a paragraph. It requires actual, rigorous, logical thinking. You literally cannot just slap the word furthermore between two completely unrelated thoughts and expect your reader to just blindly follow along. The underlying sequence of ideas must make intrinsic logical sense.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, grammar, clarity, and accuracy. We've looked at the big macro-level structure, now we need to zoom in on the micro-level building blocks. I want to fundamentally change how you think about grammar. It isn't just a list of mechanical rules designed to make your life difficult. Let's look at a very specific example. Consider this sentence. The teacher gave the students their books after he marked them. Now that sounds completely fine at a casual glance, right? But really think about it. Who exactly is them in that sentence? Did the teacher mark the books, or did he mark the actual students? This kind of pronoun ambiguity creates immediate static for the reader. They have to literally pause and reread to figure it out. Now compare it to a quick revision. After marking the books, the teacher returned them to the students. Boom! The ambiguity is completely gone. Grammar connects form and meaning. When you make the right grammatical choices, you instantly remove the barriers to understanding.
Let's look at another sentence-level choice. Scholars Williams and Bizup heavily emphasize placing your main characters in the subject position and using strong verbs. Take a passive, clunky sentence like, "The implementation of the decision was carried out by the committee." It's wordy, it's totally lifeless, and it takes the brain just a second too long to figure out who is actually doing the work. But if we revise it to, "The committee implemented the decision," it instantly identifies the actor, the committee, and uses a direct active verb, implemented. It's punchy, it's totally clear, and it's infinitely easier for the human brain to process quickly.
Now, this need for clarity is especially critical in professional contexts. Guffey and Lowy stress that business writing absolutely must be reader-centered. Imagine you're at work and you receive a message from your boss that just says, "Please handle the issue soon." What issue? What does the word handle even mean in this specific context? When exactly is soon? This kind of vague writing causes endless workplace delays and frustrating back-and-forth emails. Now, contrast that mess with, "Please email the revised attendance report to the office by 3 p.m. today." This revised version is specific, it's actionable, and it saves absolutely everyone involved a ton of time. It guarantees a proper response because the expectations are crystal clear. But listen, clarity isn't quite enough. We also desperately need accuracy. Markle and Selber point out that in technical, legal, or medical communication, accuracy isn't just nice to have. It is a fundamental matter of ethics and professional responsibility. Think about it. An incorrect date on a public notice can cause hundreds of people to miss a crucial community event. A single wrong digit in a massive corporate financial report can lead to disastrous millions of dollars business decisions. And over in academic writing, failing to accurately cite your sources isn't just considered a sloppy mistake, it's plagiarism. Accuracy means you are a reliable, trustworthy source of information, which is the absolute cornerstone of effective communication.
Okay, moving right along to Section 4, the writing process. Knowing the individual components of good writing is one thing, but how do we actually execute and put the words together without just staring blankly at a blinking cursor for an hour?
Let's dive into the 5 crucial steps of the actual writing process. First, planning. This is identifying your exact audience and outlining your main points. Second, drafting. This is just getting your raw, initial, messy ideas down on the page. Now, I need you to pay extremely close attention to steps 3 and 4 because people constantly mix them up. Revising is step 3. This is where you look at the massive big picture. Does this argument actually make sense? Is the overall structure logical? Editing is step 4. That is where you fix the grammar, the punctuation, and the specific word choice. If you edit before you revise, you might spend 20 minutes perfectly polishing a single sentence, finding the absolute perfect synonym, only to realize during the revision stage that the entire paragraph needs to be deleted because it doesn't fit the overall structure. It is a massive waste of your time. Finally, step 5 is proofreading for those tiny, lingering typographical errors.
But here is the real secret to the writing process. It is rarely a perfectly straight line from step 1 to step 5. Researchers Flower and Hayes describe writing as a recursive cognitive process. I actually really like to call it a recursive dance. You might be drafting a paragraph and suddenly realize you need to go all the way back to the planning phase to research a completely new point because you just discovered a gaping hole in your argument. You might be revising a section and realize you need to draft a completely new transition paragraph. Moving back and forth between planning, translating your ideas to text, and reviewing is completely normal. In fact, it's expected. Good writing is rarely, if ever, produced in just one single attempt.
Let's head into Section 5, academic and professional contexts. The foundational building blocks we've discussed so far are pretty universal, but the style and tone you use must always adapt to your specific audience and your specific environment.
When we contrast the academic world and the professional world, the differences are pretty striking. As scholar Ken Hyland points out, academic writing is shaped really heavily by strict disciplinary expectations. Your primary goal is to demonstrate learning and showcase your critical thinking. You use formal language, and absolutely everything must be backed by rigorous evidence-based claims.
On the flip side, Locker and Kaczmarek argue that professional writing is driven entirely by practical goals and usefulness. In a business context, your reader is busy, they are overwhelmed, they want the information to be concise, reader-centered, and immediately actionable. Especially in our digital workplaces today, where we completely lack facial expressions and vocal tone in our emails, the high usability of your writing is absolutely paramount.
All right, we are in the home stretch now. Let's head into Section 6, Mistakes and Improvement Strategies. It's time to identify exactly what is holding our writing back and look at the actionable steps we can take, starting today, to fix it.
When we look at common writing mistakes, things like unclear structures, spelling errors, and wordiness, two major traps really stand out to me. First is confusing complexity with quality. So many writers fall into the trap of using massive, convoluted sentences and overly complicated vocabulary words just to sound smart or academic. They mistakenly think big words equal big ideas. But in reality, they're just introducing that noise we talked about earlier. True expertise is taking a highly complex idea and explaining it simply. And the final fatal mistake, failing to revise. So much self-inflicted noise comes from writers who just hit send on their very first messy draft without ever reviewing it.
So how do we actually get better? Here are 7 strategies you can start using today. First, read widely. Expose your brain to good sentence patterns from really reputable sources. Second, always plan with an outline, even if it's just a bulleted list for a quick email. Third, stick strictly to one main idea per paragraph. Fourth, as we discussed, revise for meaning and structure before you ever touch the grammar. Fifth, use simple, precise language. Just get right to the point. Sixth, proofread carefully. And seventh, seek feedback from peers or colleagues. You cannot always see the gaps in your own logic because your brain fills them in automatically. Improvement is a gradual process, but by consistently applying these strategies and studying good models, you will absolutely see a massive leap in your clarity and your confidence.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If writing is truly a form of social action, if it really is how we participate in our communities, drive critical decisions, and share knowledge across the globe, what meaning are you building with your words today? Are you creating clarity, or are you just creating more noise? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown helpful, please do me a favor and like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel so we can keep bringing you more deep dives just like this one. Until next time, keep writing, keep refining, and keep communicating clearly.